This is Brandi Barnard over at Brandi Stamps, and I have a really fun video today where I'm going to give you a tour through all of Stampin' Up's different adhesive options. We have about 7 or 8 different choices here, and each one of them is important depending on the situation you're in with your crafting. So I'm going to show you all my tips and tricks and the best ways to use each one of these adhesives. I'm going to start with the one that I use the most and work my way back, but each one has its great use too. So let's start with SNAIL adhesive. This is just my really basic paper-to-paper adhesive. I use it all the time. All you do is grab the papers you want to glue and take a look at your SNAIL adhesive. There's a cover here covering up the sticky part. Flip that back and click it into place. On top here, there's a finger grip. If you're not finding the finger grip under your index finger, you're not doing it correctly. If you don't hold the finger, it'll be hard for you to get it straight on your project. And if you are holding it this way and you try to roll it, you're going to run into problems. It'll get backed up and clogged and break the tape. But if you just hold it with your finger there, lay it down flush and roll it. I usually do 2 strips, 1 on each side. Ooh, doesn't that make a satisfying noise? That is going to give you enough adhesive to stick this down to your project, and it has great staying power. I really love the SNAIL. It'll give you that flush, paper-to-paper adhering, and I reach for this all day, every day. This is the one I use the very most. Now, of course, you're going to run into a time when this has run out. So let's look at this one. When I lay this down and I try to roll it, nothing happens. And that's because the adhesive has run out. And I can tell that's true because if I check here, I can see the brown on this roll. All of the tape is gone off of it. And so let me do that part again where I take it apart. You press the bottom and the top both at the same time, and then that just lifts away. So you've got 2 pieces. This one is garbage. This is your actual adhesive roller, and you can refill it. So you'll want to get SNAIL adhesive refills, which are much less expensive, and so you can continue to refill this many, many times. The refill comes with a little cardboard support right here, so lift that off. And then just snap these 2 together, and you're back in business. This adhesive has over 400 inches on it, close to 500, and so it will do a lot of paper-to-paper adhering for you. My next favorite paper-to-paper adhesive is the Tombow Mono Liquid Glue. I just call this green glue, which is pretty silly because it's not green, it's white. So roll off your lid and you get this little tiny tip where you can just squeeze out the smallest line of glue. It's really easy to control how much you actually release. A lot of people like to do something more like this, where they go around the edge of whatever they're planning to glue, and then just go ahead and press it to whatever it needs to go on. The nice thing about this is it's slightly repositionable as that glue is wet underneath there. You can scooch it into place if necessary. And then I want to show you one other thing with this glue. If you actually apply the glue to the paper, like I've done here, can you see that? I applied this before I started the video and let it dry. So this is on here, but it's tacky. Then you create a repositionable bond. And so if you want to be able to stick something down, but then remove it later and stick it somewhere else, this is technically both a permanent and a repositionable glue if you let it dry before you adhere. That can come in handy a few different ways. My favorite is if you have any older Stampin' Up stamps that don't have the super strong adhesive on this backing, then you can put a tiny thin layer of the mono glue on the back of your stamp. Let it dry so it's totally clear. I can't see any of that white glue anymore. And now I can bring my block to it, and this is ready to use, and it will stay on the block and it won't peel off unexpectedly. And then when you're ready to take this off and put it back in the package, just lift that right off. So I do use it for that quite often. Another thing I've seen people do is while they're crafting, they will make a tiny little pile of glue on a scratch paper to work from, and then set this aside. And then you can use a toothpick to put just a little bit of glue where you need it. One example might be if you're trying to adhere a teeny tiny bow like this, you could bring a little glue to the back of that knot. This liquid glue is quite strong, so just a little bit will allow you to adhere that. When it dries, it's quite permanent and won't go away from your project. And so there's another tip with that glue. The last thing I want to tell you about this multi-glue is you also have this other end where you have more of a flat applicator, and so if you were applying glue all over a larger surface, it basically has kind of a flat rubber piece here that helps you spread the glue out. So a little bit of glue is coming out the hole, but also I'm able to spread it out in a really even, flat distribution too. Now let's look at our Stampin Dimensionals. These little guys are just what they sound like. They will add a lot of dimension to your project. They come 300 to a pack, so they will last you a long time. They look like little hexagons, so you pull that right off of the sheet and then come over to the project you're working on. Something bigger like this, I might put one in each corner, just like that. And then you easily lift away the backings on these. And now you can adhere over to your project. Only this time, this piece is glued on nice and permanent, but it's popped up, so you get some really nice dimension. There are so many projects that can sort of model this for you. Here's just one example. This little koala is holding a balloon, and I've used a dimensional behind the balloon. And so if you get a chance to look at all the dimension on this card, you can see that that balloon becomes kind of a focal point the way it's popped up. So two things I really love about dimensionals are how well they adhere, like this is not going anywhere, and that it pops things up. I was thrilled when Stampin' Up! Introduced the mini Stampin' Dimensionals. These little guys are the exact same thing, but they're just itty bitty. So let's take a look at one of these. Look how tiny that little guy is. So let's say I have just this little heart that I want to adhere onto my project. I can pop it up using a mini dimensional. And so same way, I'll just put that down, remove the backing, and then I'll come back to my project, and there's my heart, popped up and stuck really, really well. Both the regular and the mini dimensionals are going to run out eventually, and you'll have something like this, a little frame around the edge. Feel free to use these edges as well. Just rip these right off, and you'll just get a chunk that can easily be used and peeled off and stuck to a project. And so don't ever waste those, and you can even use scissors to trim these to the exact size or the way you'd like to use them, just like that. Here is another favorite of mine. These are constantly on my stamping table, the mini glue dots. They come in a roll like this, and you're just going to lift the paper backing away until you see a little blob of glue. Let's try a little red heart again. I'm not going to actually touch the glue. I'll just lay my heart on there and then lift it off. And now it's ready to adhere. It has a little bit of glue on the back. It gives it a tiny bit of dimension. Like that is popped up just a little bit, but not as much as a mini dimensional would be. One of the reasons that I love these so much is they will hold accessories that weigh a little more, like buttons or metal accents. Use it the same way. Place it on the glue dot, then lift it away. Oh, that one doesn't want to stick. No worries, if that happens, we can grab it with the tip of scissors or with a fingernail. Get it on there and stick that to your project. Even though it's kind of heavier and may run into some amount of pressure and handling, it will hold really, really well. This is just a really nice, strong adhesive. Lately, we've been having a lot of great little trinkets and card candy type decorations in the catalog, and the glue dots are ideal to hold any of these little metal embellishments and things like that in place. So all of these are great with glue dots. Let's try one of our little tiny white bows again. Here's this little bow I've already tied, and this can also be adhered with a glue dot. I'm just going to roll it. So I'll get a hold with my fingernail of one edge of it and start to roll it. I'm basically turning it into like a little cannoli there. It's just like round and long. And now I'll put it on that direction. And so when I stick this down, that glue dot doesn't stick out on the two edges. It hides it, and it also holds very, very well. Sometimes the product you're using won't want to stick to the glue dots. So these little pom-poms, whenever I want to use those on a project, I will take the glue dot just using tip of scissors or my fingernail, and I'll put it right where I want the pom-pom. There it is. I try not to touch it because the more you touch it, oils from your finger will make it less adhesive. Now I'm taking my pom-pom, laying it right on the glue dot, and just give it a nice hard smash down. Check it out, that is definitely permanently adhered to this little project. Let's look back at our koala card. That's how I placed a pom-pom at the top of his hat as well. One thing to know with glue dots is you always want to rip off the extra tape that you haven't used and just go to the last place where there's still a glue dot there, make sure that one's covered, and rip off your paper. Now, nothing is sticky here on the outside. These are all protected and waiting for you to use, and you can keep this in a drawer or a bin, or if you want to, you can put it back into the box for storage too. My next glue is the fine tip glue pen. This is a real liquidy glue, and it's meant for teeny tiny placement. So there's a different kind of a lid. It has this needle inside of the lid and a very, very tiny spout. My biggest tip with this is make sure you put the cap on right after you're done using this. You're going to hold it with the needle right against your fingertip and then slide it right down into that tip so that it won't get clogged at all, okay? So let's look at how to use that. I'm going to remove this. One of my favorite reasons that I use it is for sequins. I'll get them right where I want to glue them down, and then I'll just come along here, lift up a sequin, squeeze out just a little drop of glue, and lay the sequin back down. And you can just go across your whole project doing that. They're not completely glued into place until it dries, which is just a few minutes later. And there we go. And those are all glued down. Another fun thing you can do with this, because it is so fine, is you can actually take this tip and draw with it. Do a little swirl or whatever you're going to do. And then you could take something like our Stampin' Glitter. I like to use a tray to catch all the extra and just sprinkle that across. And as this fine tip glue dries, that little glue design that you've made will also dry. So that could be highlights on a stamped image or whatever it is that you want to make beautiful on your project. One thing that sometimes happens with the fine tip glue pen is the tip does get clogged. So let's say you forgot to replace the tip, and when you go to put it in, it won't go back down into that hole. If that happens, all you have to do is take apart this lid and run it through some really hot water. There's a couple of layers here. You can actually remove this tip, and you can take this end off as well. And so you can come right in here and do a little doctoring, take out any dried glue that's in here. And especially for me, I have found running hot water through this until you can get it to run through this opening. Once that's all clear, then you can put this back together and you'll be back in business. Next, I'll show you our tear and tape. This is just a little roll of very, very sticky tape that has the backing already in place. I often use this for projects that are going to take a lot of stress, but here's how you lay down the adhesive. You just tear it off when you get to the end of where you want to be. And then there's a backing here that you can just lift right off. And that's how the adhesive looks. Now you could take another little piece of paper and glue onto it. And this holds really, really well. It's just a very strong hold. One extra thing you can do to make that hold really strong is use your bone folder and just burnish it right across the place where you've just adhered with. This works with any adhesive really, but it'll help with your tear and tape. And wow, that is just really, really strong now if you're trying to create more of a 3D project. And so something like this little box, I've already got it scored and started. Can easily go around that edge and place tapes on all 4 of my little folds. Okay, lift those backings off, of course. And then these are ready to come and get glued together. And that's just an example of a tiny little box with all the adhesive to hold it in place. And so if you're making little boxes or party favors and things like that out of paper, use the tear and tape to assemble those so that they will stay in place. And then we've got the foam adhesive strips. These are actually quite a bit like Dimensionals in that they're made of foam. They have that backing on them that you peel away and then they'll stick. But these, instead of being little hexagons, they are long, long strips. Let's just lift one out of here so we can see what it's like. So there's this whole strip of that foam adhesive. So let's take a look at what we can do with that. The number one thing that I like to make with these are shaker cards. So I've already got one started here. I've got a piece of yellow paper with a square cut out of it, and I've already adhered a window sheet to the back of that. And by the way, I used my green glue, my Tombow glue, to adhere that, just a little skinny line. And now I can come back here and actually make a square. So I'll use my paper snips to trim and then just butt the next line right up close because I'm going to put glitter and sequins and whatever to shake around in here. And you want to create a sealed environment for them to shake in. And looks like this won't be quite long enough, but I don't want to waste any of it, so we'll put this here. Go back to our sheet. When I get to the end, I'll trim that close as I can. This was my card front, and I want to have a shaker here. I'm going to place whatever's going to be shaking right there. So let's go back to my sequins. Get a little pinch of those. Just keep it all toward the center. And of course, you might sometimes have stamping or something on that background too. But now I'll just remove my backings. Okay. Now I can get my frame exactly centered how I want it on this card front. Adhere down. And there's my shaker card. So these foam strips, while I don't break them out a lot, they are the one thing you must have to make shaker cards. And what if you want to do a circle window? Here's a circle window right here. Well, the adhesive strips still work amazingly. Here's another one. And let's just lay this down and we're just gonna start to work our way around this circle. I'm just sticking it down, and the foam is flexible enough that I can go ahead and mold this right into a circle. Oh, this is kind of perfect, so we'll just end it right there. Make sure everything's stuck down the way you wanted it. Pile of sequins. This one will only have one strip to remove. So as you can see, this could easily be done in a heart shape or a star shape or a diamond or whatever you need. And so any shaker you want to make, just reach for your foam adhesive strips. I hope you've had a great time learning about all of these different excellent adhesive options from Stampin' Up. Remember, everything I showed you in this video today can be ordered at my website, brandystamps.com. Just click shop. And go ahead and like this video, give me a comment, show me some love on YouTube, subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and click the bell so you'll get notifications every time I have a new video. And as always, happy stampin'!